A long time ago in internet years, EA made a deal with Disney to make the Star Wars Battlefront games. There was excitement for it, believe it or not, when the first teaser trailer was shown. But when it came out, it was missing so much of what made the original so great, such as strong single-player content, actual classes instead of just the weapons, tons of heroes, and maps. In fact, almost half of the game was locked behind DLC. That actually sounds like a golden era based on what was to come. Despite lacking so much, the game was beautifully faithful to the original 3 movies, and was one of the most immersive Star Wars games I had ever played, with all the detail and authentic sound effects that really captured the feel of a galaxy far, far away. But we also knew that a second installment was coming in the future. It wasn't even a secret that Bothan spies had to die for, but hindsight's 2020. Apparently, they listened to many of the complaints of the first one. There's going to be a story mode this time that would explain the events between episodes 6 and 7, and it would be canon! It would have maps and heroes from all 3 trilogies, and this time, the DLC would be free instead of waiting 2 years for a slim time frame to get it for free! Yes, that happened. This is going to be everything the first game should have been and more! What could possibly— son of a Binks! Is it so wrong for me to be optimistic about a game that's getting more negative attention than positive? EA decided to implement loot boxes as a sort of reward system and had the oh wow, even my sarcasm can't take it. Ugh. They wanted to make loot boxes something you could also pay for to get more bonuses. There's a number of obvious problems with this, but the one I'll go over for the moment is that sometimes you'll get high rewarded bonuses that can give you a serious edge in the battle. It was a form of pay to win and no way to control what you're actually buying. You know those capsule toys that hide the toy inside, you can't see what it is until you buy it, and it turns out to be a third extra of the one you already have? This would have been the video game equivalent on top of how long it already takes to unlock all the content in the game, on top of how long it was originally going to take to unlock Luke and Vader. But thanks to the enormous backlash involving the most downvoted comment in Reddit history, a tremendous amount of pre-order cancels, and that was if you found out how to do it apparently, having the feature get banned in some countries since it can be seen as a form of gambling, one of the lowest user ratings for a game before it even came out, EA stock dropping to the sewers, and unconfirmed, but it wouldn't be surprising if Disney had to have a strong word and lashing with EA before they finally got rid of the pay for loot crates, as well as lowering the amount it takes to unlock father and son. At last we have had our revenge. They might bring back the pay for loot boxes later, but we can only hope that it's permanently disabled. In the end, EA still didn't do enough damage control, as it suffered from poor sales at the start.
Now your failure is complete.
Am I here to join the hate that even Yoda would give in to? Or will I let my inner fanboy consume me? A little from column B and a lot from column A.
You're right. The Empire's time has come.
Meet Iden Versio, star of the single-player campaign and leader of Inferno Squad for the Empire. The tale begins just before the Battle of Endor, and with the second Death Star now a giant fireworks show in the sky, the Empire enacts Operation Cinder, which— let's face it, anyone with a brain would have abandoned ship when you found out what that was. The Empire wants to continue to spread fear throughout the galaxy, but for those who have read the Aftermath novels, or like me have checked out major Star Wars channels like Star Wars Theories, Stupendous Wave, Bessie, and so on and so forth, you know what Operation Cinder really is and question the sanity of anyone who would carry it out. If you want to know more, I highly recommend checking out those channels mentioned earlier. Oh, and before I forget, Iden is not the only character you'll play as. You'll see some familiar faces, as well as this guy who, spoiler alert, is going to be the fan favorite.
You're always telling me to take risks. Seemed like the most irresponsible thing I could do.
The campaign itself is about 6 to maybe 12 hours long, and isn't going to be anything spectacular except for the story itself and the dialogue that can be found while playing through the chapters.
Boy, am I glad to see you. What brings you out here, Commander?
You do, General. Senator Organa sent us.
Now take it back, Chewie. This is the worst day imaginable.
Which I really liked, but in this day and age, you can watch those moments online somewhere, and any Star Wars fan who hasn't picked up the game should definitely watch them on YouTube, especially for Shriv.
If I die here, I'm glad you will too.
Well, thank you, buddy.
The only other 2 things worth noting is that completing the game unlocks rewards, and there are some special objects to find in order to unlock more stuff in the game, giving it at least a little bit more of a reason to explore some of the levels. The only other single-player content that can also be played in 2-player split screen is the arcade mode. Besides being able to set up a custom match to help you spam Force Repel and Death by Acrobatics to clear those challenges, there are some that do have actual requirements. Pick a side, check off the to-do list, clear it on the higher difficulty setting. 3 seconds? Screw this, we're moving on to the multiplayer stuff. The previous installment had 9 default online modes, a free DLC mode, and about 4 through DLC. A mistake I made in the review for the rebooted entry was that I didn't go over the modes in great detail and thought they were simplistic enough to get the gist of, such as not explaining that Walker Assault is a game of protect or defend the walkers while shutting down or turning on Y-Wing bomber squads, which was the only time to get a good deal of damage in, unless you tied them up with the snow speeders. And Supremacy, which was whoever held the most control points by standing in the right spot with no opposers, wins! But only 2 are open at a time to defend or capture, creating a tug-of-war kind of game. Now that I think about it, those were the only ones that needed a bit more info, but I bring those up specifically because they've been kind of merged together and called Galactic Assault. Defend or stop the oncoming tanks or walkers, sabotage bases or defenses by pressing a button, stand in the place it wants you to, and continue following the objectives until your team wins. Unless you're defending, then either try to take out the tanks or walkers, or eliminate the enemy count at the top of the screen, but if they advance, then they get additional troopers. Oh, and in case it wasn't made clear by now, when the number count is red, that's how many enemies you have left to defeat, and when it's blue, that's how many reinforcements you have left. This mode can go on for a long time because of all of its requirements, or it can be over within the first stage if you and your team know what you're doing. Although for Kashyyyk, that just seems impossible on the first area. You'll play on the larger maps, and you can use heroes and vehicles once you've earned enough points. I'll explain about that later. This is the mode that closely resembles the large-scale battles the movies are so well known for, making it one of the more popular choices. Moving on to Starfighter Assault, let me begin by saying that when I tried this in the beta, I was absolutely livid by what they did. By default, the way you would control a starship is like this. This one makes it go up and down, and this one makes it go left and right. That made the controls of Star Fox Zero look like Star Fox 64. I was ready to call it the worst downgrade in video game history, along with it actually being worse than the microtransactions. But after finding the options that I couldn't find in the beta, I finally did get them to their majestic feeling that they had before. I just hate that the stupid control options like that and the touch panel from before were the default options because who in their right mind thought these controls were a good fit? Sorry, just really had to get that off my chest. In the previous title, you just shot down the other team to get points and either defend or attack escaping transports from time to time. That's thankfully not the case here, as there's a far greater emphasis on objectives. Now you have to blow up certain targets like generators and cruisers, or protect or take out the bomb squads, or reduce the offending team to 0 before they can move on to their next objective. The power-ups from before are gone, and from what I've played so far, there are no shields. Yes! X-Wings and the like can heal themselves, but each fighter now has enough firepower to make this a non-issue, and many, if not all of the spacecrafts, can regenerate their own health if they stayed out of the line of fire long enough. Rolling and U-turns are no longer mapped to a button and have to be performed manually, which is just fine in my book. Lock-on targeting has been replaced with actual aiming, with the little circle being a bullseye mark. Your weapons can still overheat unless you have the special that ignores that for a while, and aside from the times where it's really hard to dodge a missile because floating debris can't be seen, I honestly believe this mode saw the most improvement out of everything else.
We've disabled their generators, but sensors indicate more coming online. Await further orders.
Heroes vs. Villains made a few changes that ultimately worked, but sadly it doesn't look like that many people caught on to it yet, and some maps give clear advantages to certain characters. This time it's 4-on-4, and everyone controls a hero. One person on each team is a target, and when a target on either team is eliminated, then new targets are selected on both sides. This goes on until one team has taken out 10 target players. Last time, only the most sensible players understood that you should stick together! And this should make it obvious to know that, oh, that guy has a shield icon, I better stick close to protect him. And, if we all attack the one with the bullseye on them, we can win faster. Adoy! Cargo, aka Capture the Flag, was reformed into Strike, with the teams needing 2 victories by fulfilling the objective or wiping out the opposing force. There are no heroes and vehicles, but you still have the other 2 classes to spend your points on. The maps are smaller, but the action feels more intense. And finally, Blast. 2 teams, last one standing wins, basic. Also no heroes and vehicles. The only ones from the defaults not to return are Hero Hunt, Droid Run, and Drop Zone. Turning Point was free DLC. I think I'm okay with those being cut, but I'm not sure if there are any new modes coming in the DLC, and once again the DLC is supposed to be free, so please let me have this moment of enjoyment, as well as some of the other things that I really got a kick out of. Specifically placed power-ups do not exist anymore. Instead, all of the extras, such as using vehicles, the slightly better classes like Jet Troopers and Wookiees, and of course the heroes, need to be earned instead. And no, it doesn't matter what era you're in. You can have Maul on Hoth or Yoda on Jakku. This also applies to the hero ships and Starfighter Assault. There is still a limit to how many of the bonuses can be used at a time, and your points with each of them are less earned than the regular 4 classes, but at least this way, the extra goods create the incentive that you need to play well instead of having the item placements memorized. The better you play, the more points you earn, getting you one step closer to using those heroes. I also like that certain abilities like Force Powers and Team Healing now show their range instead of having no idea how far it actually goes. And should you happen to die right after selecting the bonuses, you'll get most of your points back, even if you have no idea what happened. At first, I didn't see the big hallelujah of why the classes were back. If you could just have the weapons and customize them, then it would have meant the same thing to me. But since the last game only allowed 2 personalized card setups, and this one allows nearly every class, character, and vehicle to have their own, I see that as a pretty big upgrade. You can also switch which main weapon you want to use, and select any cards you've unlocked and upgraded while waiting to get back into the battle. When I first started playing, I just wanted to use the heavies and kept getting destroyed. But then I started playing with my brain, and what a difference that makes! Most maps in Galactic Assault start off in large open-spaced areas, making it perfect for specialists. Heavies are great for choke points, Assault for more maneuverability, and officers are great for support. Although I have to say, explosive heavies are now my favorite. Everything else I found favor with was pretty much already stated at the start. A single-player campaign with a darn good story, and they even updated it with new chapters. Yes, for free! One could complain that the whole story should have been there from the start, but as long as I don't have to spend any cash on it, then I just see it as something to look forward to later on. Galactic Assault feels bigger than the maps from before, and I like the sense that most of the troopers will excel at one portion or another because of how the map changes. It's great to see a number of familiar faces finally brought back, and I think there's more on the way. I've heard General Grievous is coming in the future based on the info that was found in the codes in the beta, and I look forward to that! Strike is something I enjoy as it feels more compact and focused, but my favorite mode by far is Starfighter Assault. Once again, change the default controls to something that actually works, and guys, I'm in love! Before, most maps were above a planet, but here only the Camino Lab has a surface, while the others take place in space, and there's so much debris, asteroids, and objects that you're not just flying through dead space shooting down humans and AI bots. I always get a thrill out of going through the structures to tear them up from the inside, giving your piloting skills an extra challenge. There are more starships to use with their own abilities, along with more hero ships, like Yoda's that can use a disable effect, and Boba Fett Slave 1 now has seismic charges with that delicious destructive sound. Shields are gone, power-ups are gone, spawn trapping is gone, and there are more objectives with each side having to pay attention to what they have to do. It's the closest I'm gonna get to a Rogue Squadron 4, and I'm usually in the top 5 players every time I join. I can only pray that this mode doesn't get updated with features that make it undesirable. Speaking of... I can ignore the little hiccups that make the game laughable at times, such as how the game can't tell if I won or lost, the endings of certain events either don't play or don't play the way they should, the oddities that make no sense whatsoever, or this death that somehow caused me to sit out the rest of the match. But there are just some issues I just can't get past, and sadly, there's just too many of them. Heroes vs. Villains is a great place to practice with the powerhouses, get some extra early points, and clear those hero challenges. But the problem comes from having either idiot teammates who will make you wish that team attack was on, and equally bad is when a teammate leaves the match cause there's no way you can actually win. It's either you're lucky to be on the team that's competent or abandon the SS Lost Cause. It's hardly the game's fault for that, but you can almost bet on it happening every time. I rarely see the meta player mid-match, and let's not forget how some heroes have dominating advantages over others on certain maps, or the bizarre things that can happen here. This mode is by far one of the jankiest things I've ever seen, still proving that glitches are stronger than the Force. I didn't know Yoda's Unleashed move could actually leave a programmed character paralyzed. I can't move anything but the camera. My body won't stop twitching. Someone please help me. I can't do anything but cry, and now I'm a sitting target. This, you gotta see to believe. I don't have the slightest idea how this happened and why I'm still alive, and falling further causes me to have clipped through the entire area, seeing textures I never would have known were there. Have fun with this game, Boundary Breaks! Blast is just a normal team-based deathmatch. Nothing against that, but there's hardly a real reason to play it unless objectives make you nervous and you're afraid to try hard. The arcade mode doesn't have it set up to where you can practice the online modes offline, and it also doesn't have it where you can practice the vehicles outside of the campaign, and you can't really jump to those right away. You can set it up to have 2 players in different challenges, but let me explain it like this while showing you how long some of the load screens are. You're gonna go into Galactic Assault, finally play as the hero or villain for the first time, and get destroyed in a heartbeat because they're not as OP as you thought. For example, Luke's Force Push and Repel only insta-kill CPUs, not human players, so it's easy for one to make that mistake, especially since it was a trooper wrecker in the previous title. The same could be said for some of the vehicles that you can't test out before heading online, and boom! You're frustrated with the controls, and you can't waste time going through the menus to test out the other options because who knows how long you have left. But oh no, nothing compares to the 2 biggest problems surrounding this title. It's not the microtransactions because at the time of this video, it doesn't exist anymore, remember? Although sadly its cold presence can still be felt. The first one is the grind. Even though they've lowered the amount it takes to unlock heroes and villains with the in-game currency, that band-aid is not enough to cover the damage they've caused. Let's go over this one step at a— Jeez, it just now finished loading?! At one of my best performances and a little boost from leveling up, the most I've gotten was this. Otherwise, it looks kinda like this. Some of the modes can take up to 15 minutes to finish, and getting trooper crates cost 4,000 credits, so imagine how long that takes! Starfighter and hero crates cost nearly half that much, but it only slightly helps and for one item that I'll talk about soon. Yes, clearing the challenges to get rewards helps as well, but only by so little! Now imagine picking up the game months after its release. You are going to be horribly underpowered compared to those that leveled up at the beginning. Naturally, there are always going to be those that are going to have the advantage because of the early experience. But the difference here is that they'll be decked out with the cards that give them extra bonuses, giving them an unfair advantage. I know that unlocking and powering up cards was ruined because of the microtransactions, and fixing it at this point is nearly undoable. Besides the extra challenges giving out more crates, which is nice, but it still isn't enough. At least it's better than the daily loot crates where you won't feel a thing. Stupid duplicates. But I'm still going to point this out anyways. The optimal and fair way to have done this would have been by unlocking the cards through the arcade challenges, giving players a fair chance to unlock them before going online. If they didn't give you special loot crates for beating the game, I would have been very upset. Even just getting some extra rewards for leveling up would have been nice, but that's not the case here. Oh, and there's 2 kinds of leveling up, your overall level and your card level that's separate for nearly every playable thing in the game. And here's the worst of it all. Let's say there's a card you want to max out. Well, unless you're lucky enough to get it in a random loot crate, it'll be a long and tedious process. To unlock a card and get it to level 4 will take 720 crafting parts. To repeat, for one card to be fully powered up from scratch without getting it by sheer dumb luck in a loot crate will take 720 crafting parts. In the loot crates, you get between 35 and 60 crafting parts in just one of them. I personally don't care about unlocking and powering up everything in the game, but I can't just simply pick a card I want and fully max it out. To level up a card, you'll need to have your online level up to a certain point, but that'll be the easy part, and your character's card level as well. To level up the character card level, you'll need to have a certain amount of cards unlocked and or leveled up, which means you will have to unlock and power up some of the cards, even the ones you don't want. And just a reminder, it goes like that for nearly every card set in the game. To further add more pain, like running over a broken leg, when you first start off, you only get 1 card to use until you reach card level 5, and then a 3rd card at card level 10. So for the first 10 levels, you basically have to throw away 400 crafting parts, and that's for, yep, nearly every playable thing in the game. Here's a game that got loot crates right. I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with Overwatch. You level up or clear some of the arcade challenges, and you get loot boxes that don't affect your stats at all. It's just for voice lines, tags, victory poses, emotes, play the game intros, icons, gold, and the extra costumes, as well as the ones that only show up during certain events, making them more exciting for an item that has no true impact in the game, and that's the way it should be! Yeah, you can also buy those with real-world money, but you'd have to have way too much cash to just throw it away like that. For those confused, people are okay with this because even if you did waste money on them, it doesn't give that person an advantage in the game, unlike what EA was going to do. And then the other problem. Say whatever you will about the first Battlefront game EA put out, but it was one of the smoothest online shooters on a console I've ever played, and I'm not the only one that can vouch for that. Yeah, it wasn't perfect, but I can understand problems with rubber banding and players lagging to be an issue with internet providers, and not always the servers themselves. While my internet provider likes to randomly cost me some lives unfairly, the issue is that in modes like Galactic Assault, where the maps are bigger and there's more players, the game can freeze! Not completely, but yes, it will stop for about a second and then go back, and it just throws your whole game off. And don't think it only happens once or twice. It pretty much does this on a regular basis in Galactic Assault, the biggest online mode in the game. One of the reasons EA's first attempt at the Battlefront series was so immersive, besides everything I already said before, was that the online servers were so well done that it never came to a halt, along with the enjoyment that players like myself usually got. For clarification, it's a downgraded server performance, and there's no excuse for it. Well, guess I didn't speak too soon. It appears that I haven't encountered the freezing anywhere near as much as I did after the last Jedi update. In fact, I almost never see it freeze. I'm still seeing some jankiness, but I'd much rather put up with this laugh riot than having it throw my game off. And while this only makes the game better for those who have it, the grind is sadly what is going to turn off new players the most. That and the horrible backlash still fell throughout the world. Looking at the situation now, it feels pretty much the exact opposite of my experience with the previous title. That one started off with plenty of modes, but lacked content, and was fun. Then it got worse and worse. Here, it starts off with lots of content, but few modes, and the online was terrible, but actually seems to be getting better, and they've been listening to many of the complaints. Credit where credit is due, but I'm not completely ready to believe that there won't be some update that ruins my fun if the last game was anything to go by. I want you guys to understand, this was my second most anticipated game of 2017, after E3, and it's depressing that it turned out the way it did. Of the 5 online modes, I can enjoy Starfighter and Strike, and now that Galactic Assault doesn't run like Smash, I can have fun with that too. The story, despite a few parts where you're left wondering what to do because you have no idea where to go, until it finally says, "Go here, stupid, find some random Joe, or die trying to explore," is enjoyable from a narrative perspective and dialogue as a whole. But don't bet on going back except to clear some challenges if you have nothing better to do. The presentation is still top-notch, and I'm left impressed with so many of the model characters, with the exception of the Ewok movements, and this part which makes Leia Poppins look visually stunning. I'm still gonna be hooked on Starfighter Assault, so if anything drastic changes in the future, I'll let you know. The gameplay is fine, and I'm happy I can say that, and I admit that it does feel like they're making many of the necessary changes and improvements. But the sting at the start is still felt. There's just currently not enough modes to play online. I can't help but feel like something will go wrong in the future. Get ready to wait a lot, and that grind is not welcome on any planet. A 2 out of 5. A little fun with a lot of flaws. One thing I hope they add in the future is the ability to choose what map you want to play on, just like the first one. Otherwise, it may take you a long time to get to a desired map. Be mindful of when you use your points. For example, you don't want to spend credits on a tank when the area is about to change. What a waste that was. Besides General Grievous, I hope we see more modes get added. New planets like Mustafar, Felucia, and Dagobah return, and more heroes like Qui-Gon Jinn, Mace Windu, Count Dooku, and I was surprised that we haven't gotten Obi-Wan yet, but I'm thinking that since certain heroes have different looks, maybe we can have both Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope for good old Kenobi. Much like the previous game, you can practice with Kylo Ren while the game installs. I still don't understand why a physical copy needs to install, but hey, it still beats looking at a loading screen, which you're gonna see a lot of. I can't help but enjoy this. I feel like I'm behind the scenes while they're shooting the movies. It's good not to be sick again, and hopefully I can get my momentum back and get those gosh darn reviews that have been piling up finally completed. So let's see what I can get done next. Probably Sonic Forces, but if anything changes, I'll let you know on Twitter or in the Discord channel. And with all that said, I'll see you in another video. Later, everyone!